Your favorite sportsbook, BetUS.com, is back for our 28th year of NFL action. With the industry's biggest sign-up bonus of up to 200%, BetUS offers our members the opportunity to cash in on all your favorite sports, including NFL, NBA, MLB, and more. We've also got hundreds of new casino games, including the coolest new European slots, and our live dealers are waiting for you at the table. Sign up at BetUS.com today to get into the action. BetUS, where the game begins.
And now, broadcasting live from Las Vegas, the Snake Sports Talk Show with Jake Silva starts now.
Here we go, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the Snake Sports Talk Show. Wherever and however you may be watching and listening, thanks for making us part of your lovely evening. We're live on all platforms, Roku, iHeartRadio, and all social media platforms known to man. For you to like, subscribe, hit the bell button, keep you up to date on future and past episodes, guys. We got a lot to unpack. We got some retirements. We got teams moving forward and advancing in both the NBA and the NHL playoffs. But there is a lot to really discuss about how these playoffs have been. Chase is going to be joining us here in just about a few minutes. But, yeah, it's been exciting all the way through. I really have loved enjoying watching hockey playoffs. Eventually, I will get back into like the heat of things with like Major League Baseball because I love the sport as well, you know. But that's usually how it is. Whenever the NHL, NBA playoffs, that's usually how it always kind of turns out in the end. So I basically wanted to discuss this. So we've announced early on for the NBA, arguably one of the greatest coaches who's ever done it. And so the announcement of it is Greg Popovich of the San Antonio Spurs has announced that he is stepping down as a head coach. And we've been talking about this for quite a while. We know that a lot of these things were connected to her health concerns recently. And Greg Popovich, for the longest time, always gave us the best moments. For a 29-year historical run with the Spurs, I mean, he is San Antonio. He lives and breathes San Antonio. So Greg Popovich for 29 years, you think about it. So he's going to be transitioning from full-time head coach to a full-time head of basketball operations for the franchise. And that just is about, you know, the best nod that you could do for the San Antonio Spurs organization. But 76 years old, and a lot of people were very concerned about his health status and how he was really going to deal with a lot of things off the court, which is scary. But he was suffering a stroke and nearly had dealt with some harsh health issues. But Popovich guided San Antonio to 5 championships, overseeing the era that was defined by Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili. He's also become the NBA's all-time winningest head coach with 1,422 victories. He had also reached the playoffs in 22 consecutive victories and winning 50-plus games 18 years in a row. This will be the first time that he would ever be up into the front office since 96-97. First time ever. And if you recall, because Popovich had the pleasure of coaching great players. I mean, you had David Robinson, Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, Monty Ginobili, Kawhi Leonard, and then in his final dance with Victor Wembanyama. And a lot of people asked about it. They were like, what would Greg Popovich, how long could he possibly keep this up? Well, I remember like when the draft happened, okay, there was the draft lottery and the Spurs got the number 1 overall pick. That was where Victor Wembanyama, they used that pick. And you knew right then and there that Pop wanted to get his last shot at like developing arguably one of the greatest uprising players right now in the league, and that's Victor Wembanyama. And he's done this for so long. The Spurs organization, they were always ran by tough defense, smart scoring. At the same time, you could not end up taking a risk on some of these baskets unless you were Kawhi Leonard. I mean, he had the pleasure of coaching a lot of great players in this very organization for 29 years, now moving into the front offices of basketball operations. Many people even thought, could the Spurs honestly get in the NBA its first ever woman as a head coach in the league? I mean, that was where we thought about with Becky Hammon. And you see what she's doing right now in Las Vegas with the Aces. She's built a culture. She knows exactly how to set the standard and the tone. And all of the women there on that organization, they all follow. It's the same ways that Craig Popovich has done it. And what's funny about it is that Pop always was like a father figure to many great people in the organization. Always showed him the way, always paved the path of success. That's why you see back-to-back WNBA championships with Becky Hammon. She's built together a great, strong culture in Las Vegas. You see a lot of great players win multiple titles and have also been great players on their own personal resume, to where Tim Duncan's a Hall of Famer. So, and Popovich was always the centerpiece of all those successes. What's funny of it is we think about the late Bill Walton, and his personality. Many people would consider it quirky, but many people got him. Many people understood him. So I think about the same way with Greg Popovich. Tough. If you didn't understand it, you wouldn't have never understood who Greg Popovich and what he was about. And he was a great friend, great mentor, amazing coach, and provided 5 championships and 18 straight seasons of 50-plus wins. Great. We're going to miss a lot of great memories and moments that we saw on the floor with the Spurs, and loving how we will just love every single moment that he gave us, whether it's the finals, the regular season, and sometimes even in some of the post-game interviews and even pre-games, he's just in his own element. So Greg Popovich, after 29 years, is stepping down, and the replacement for him is Mitch Johnson. And so they're staying the course, as he was an acting head coach for nearly all of this past season after Popovich had the serious stroke back in November. There's a lot of trust in the organization. I'm not entirely sure how Mitch Johnson is honestly going to end up taking this role, but I'm trusting Greg Popovich that he knows with what he was doing and that he was mentoring up the next potential head coach to take on this role. So I wish all the best during retirement, and I also wish all the best while operating now in the franchise's basketball operations role. Because Greg Popovich has a knack for talent, and he has a knack for treating this organization the best way possible. Thank you again, Pop, for many of the 29 memories that we have seen in the finals and in the regular season as a mentor, as a great friend, as a father figure to most, and even as a great coach. So I wanted to get to this story because I know it happened this week. But the Los Angeles Lakers, they've been eliminated in 5. It was clear. It was really clear. Like Minnesota, they slammed the door. They knew they had to end the series, and they completely outplayed physically the Lakers. I mean, Jackson Hayes was just getting demolished left and right. The other thing is too, I mean, I put kudos to LeBron James for multiple reasons, because number one, to do what he's doing at his age, but then at the same time, the numbers line that did not translate into potentially staying alive in the playoffs. I mean, you just saw how marginalized this Lakers team was. Go back to when the trade initially happened. Okay, can we give a little bit of grace to Nico Harrison? We saw some of the stuff to where he saw Luka Doncic not be at his best as far as his physique. Kind of, he was getting a bit overweight, and that became deemed a problem. But we know that Luka Doncic could obviously be a hyper-aggressive scorer, but when you watch the Lakers, they got no size, and they lack a bunch of depth on the bench. And this was one of the worries I had for the Lakers, is because they looked a lot like a reincarnated Houston Rockets when they lost Clint Capella. That's initially, you cannot move on to the second round, and not to mention, you can't even win a title like this when you are so small from rim protection and perimeter defending. You are going to get pushed around, and that's exactly what the Timberwolves did. In fact, Rudy Gobert, of all people, literally had arguably his best night. He had his best night on the floor. And usually not a lot of people give Rudy Gobert that much credit. And so the Timberwolves, to me, the way that I looked at this, that would be a fun watching Western Conference final between them and Oklahoma City. I mean, OKC is the favorite to get there. They're a young core. They got through a lot of the experience. And by the way, you watch the Houston Rockets, that was OKC 2 years ago. So they have already now built up that potential. But when I watch the T-Wolves with Chris Finch is a great coach. And at the same time, did all the right things. And then at the same time, you are leading with Anthony Edwards. Hyper aggressive, has all the energy, and all the players follow him. Now, the other thing that also went bad for the Lakers, I mean, you watch that call from JJ Redick. What was he doing? And not to mention, he was asked about that in the post game, and sure, feelings got involved, and he got cranky. But we knew about this from the beginning with JJ Redick. Okay, did you honestly think that he would be that coach that would get them over the top? He's got a lot to learn from this. But from where the Lakers are kind of in this bind right now because they need better players around them. I mean, you look at the status of Giannis. You look at a lot of other players that are up there. And the thing I've said this before is, like, I look at the Lakers right now, and a lot of question marks are all surrounding LeBron James's future. To me personally, if I'm the Lakers, it's not personal, it's business. I'm moving on from this. Because at the same time, you know who's a perfect example that I would go and watch? Just go down to Dodger Stadium and go watch the LA Dodgers play with Shohei Ohtani. You know what they did, right? I mean, they won straight division titles in the NL West. Okay, and they've been to the postseason multiple times, but they never could get over the hump. And once they got Shohei Ohtani, last year they won the World Series. They were arguably the best recording team in Major League Baseball. And ticket sales, merchandises, and not to mention just the overflowing of just the fan bases coming from internationally. If I'm the Lakers, I'm sitting there, I'm Rob Pelinka and Jeannie Buss, and I'm like, we got Luka. We got an international star next to Giannis, next to Jokic and Wemby. I would want to build around that. Just go ask the Dodgers how that worked. They know how to do it. I mean, hell, They started when they got Mookie Betts, and then you doubled down and you got Shohei Ohtani. That entire lineup is unstoppable. You can't pitch around it. But that's where the Lakers, and this is typical of Los Angeles, if you are not winning titles and you're not winning games, you will literally you will disappear. Like nobody will be talking about you for the next couple of years. You don't want to be that. LA is always Laker and Dodger town. So if you're the Lakers, I'm cutting my losses from this, and I would be thinking about the long term because that's exactly why you acquired Luka, isn't it? You gave up an entirety of a lot of picks, and not to mention, you gave up a rim defender and perimeter attacker in AD. That's why you looked marginalized. But yet people fail to see that, and that's why the Lakers were being sent home in 5. And that's really what it was. So I look, Chase, I'm loving with what I'm seeing from Minnesota. Like they are, I don't want to get too much into the hype, but Chris Finch learned a lot. And I think at the same time, there's no better energy that I would love to watch than Anthony Edwards. And I have them, like, I could just see this. T-Wolves and OKC in the Western Conference Final. Like, who would not want that? A young team that's been through this, and a team that's just energized. They're physical. They do a lot of the things right. And not to mention, I mean, I watched the Knicks, and thank God they closed that series. But when I look at Karl Anthony Towns, this is completely different than when they had them. Now you got Dante DiVincenzo. You got Julius Randle. I've got physicality everywhere. And this is exactly what you want in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, the playoffs are looking a lot better than what the regular season has. I mean, the regular season has been, nothing short of just a crap show in terms of how it is. Like, nobody tunes in. Nobody's, paying attention to what's going on. Nobody could give 2 shits less about what LeBron's doing anymore. And that's what it seems like. It seems like it was always the LeBron show, and, like, what has he done? So I'm glad that the Lakers finally lost in the first round for the first time in a while, and it's just it's nice to see. And I'm glad that we're going to see a series with the Cavs and the Celtics, and then we're going to get to see OKC and the Timberwolves. And
well, this is the thing. I know a lot of people like, and it was this is just kind of the typical thing of our society. They're very quick to hop on Twitter and speak their mind. But like when it comes to LeBron James, because you got to think in the last, I saw I saw a record on this, but in the last couple of years since the bubble, they've been 1-3.
Yeah.
They didn't even they struggled against the Nuggets. They've struggled in this series against Minnesota. But the problem of it is just like they're so latched. And that's why
hate that 2020 year, man. Like for sports, it was just it was a terrible year for sports because you had a shortened season for baseball. The Dodgers were able to win it and everything. It was like a Mickey Mouse championship for them.
Well, it was a lot of uncertainty at the end of the day. But I will say
but like you also got to give it, like the Lakers go in and win the championship, and then you got the freaking Buccaneers with Tom Brady. Like, dude, come on. Like, you got no fans there to watch and support. You got everybody looking at different things in different directions. Like these championships in 2020, you got to look at them with an asterisk because it's just like, would they have won it if a normal season was happening? Like if there was normalcy, do we see the Dodgers win that year? Probably not.
Well, technically,
it's not like how it is now.
Technically, here's my thing: is the only one I would obviously put the asterisk on is Major League Baseball. I'm not even doubting that at all because it was just a shortened season. And this was at a point we didn't even know what the hell Rob Manfred was literally going to do because he was sitting on this thing for a while and we didn't even have the season start. And I was just like, dude, start with 100 games. Just take the 62 out, put 100 games in, and then we got plenty of sports to talk about. But here's the other thing too. The grace period for the NBA and the NHL, they were already on the tail end of the season. So it didn't even matter, even if they got 2-3 games left of the season. That would have never even mattered. And yet, the grace period on the NBA is that a lot of these teams yes, it was really an uncertain time because they weren't even sure how they were going to end up playing this out. But I do give them credit for being in a neutral site, and they were trying to do the absolute best that they could during this time. But, they got plenty of rest. That's like one of the biggest things.
I get it. It's just
healthy.
I get it. It's just looking at the 2020 season with all of the championships like NHL and MLB, NFL, and NBA. Like, dude, like if you have a normal season like they did like this past year, and then the 2023 season, and the 22 season, and the 21 season, do we see a team like the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a Tom Brady led team? Do we see them go to the Super Bowl? We probably don't. We probably see, either the Chiefs, the Eagles, or somebody different. Like we just did in a normal season without, the restrictions, without like with the fans there, with the stuff that you see, and like, players out because they're getting COVID tests and they're not able to play, it's impacting the game and everything. So like,
time out, because here's the thing. That with all these testings and all the rest of it, again, the players had their stance on this. I mean, you remembered exactly with how Kyrie Irving went about it. He was not taking the vaccines. So at the end of the day, there were mostly it was a lot of the harp that you got from the NBA, but players like, in the NFL, I mean, Tom Brady had guys, working out at his house because they couldn't go to the facilities. They couldn't end up doing OTAs and all the rest of it. But if you think about it, 2020 was uncertain times, but what did we get out of it? Man, the NFL draft had so many ratings. Not to mention the season itself, because we got in the schedule and we saw all the players playing, like that was the best time. And to be truthfully, because I still would think that the Tampa Bay Buccaneers would have won that anyway, because look at how they were built on that roster. I mean, Levante David, Shaq Barrett, like they have talented guys. But
you had three of Mahomes' guys out due to COVID. Like one of them was a nurse. Like he got his nursing degree and he ended up going to be a nurse rather than going to play football because of the COVID-19. So that's one of his offensive linemen that were out. And then he had two more that were out because of a positive COVID test. What does the outcome of that happen? He ends up getting annihilated because he doesn't have the starting offensive line that he normally does in front of him that he had the majority of the season. And we see an entirely different Chiefs team going into the last two games of the playoffs and into the Super Bowl because he doesn't have it. Like if you have these players here without restriction, without these tests, without any issues whatsoever, we don't even know if Tom Brady wins that Super Bowl because Mahomes has everybody that he needs. That's what I'm saying. Like all of these players that are gone due to these tests and that have to miss a game because of this, we see them on their teams. If this whole thing does not happen, we see these players back with their original teams, making an impact, making a difference, and that was the difference in that Super Bowl. Because everybody wants to forget about how bad that O-line was for the Chiefs in that Super Bowl.
I think
he was also missing three of his starting offensive linemen.
But here's the thing. I think they forget about it because of the fact that the Chiefs, after that, like it took a little bit of time, they got two more titles out of it. That's why they forget about it. That's why I'm like, at the end of the day, like, because it would be a completely different story if the Chiefs didn't win those two titles. Like they just went on a whole stretch, right? And they were just close but no cigar, right? Because they only had that one time in 21 where they lost to the Bengals. So once that happened, I mean, we could have gone on this whole stretch of like, this was unfair for them. That would have been a completely different story. But because they won the two titles, they're like, who cares? We got two more titles up on it, and we recovered very vastly well than most other teams that did. Because here's the thing, Tampa Bay, even if they won that Super Bowl, I'm still seeing them in the playoffs. I'm not saying
I agree with you.
Team, but they, but they actually built the relevancy. But here's the thing: how long has it been since Tampa's really built their relevancy? Since 2002. They've always been a team that's like kind of, they're a little lax, cocktails in the morning kind of organization. Like, there was not a whole lot of buy-in as far as being a competitive team until Tom got there. and
No, I get that.
out.
I get what you're saying, but my point being is like you have so many of these players just missing games in general. And like what I'm saying is that if you don't have restrictions for these players and they don't miss this time, it's not just for the Chiefs. We saw it throughout the entirety of the playoffs. Like on the NFC side too, we seen players like Tom Brady does not make this Super Bowl with the Tampa Bay Buccaneers if this COVID-19 season does not happen. Or period. Like if it does not happen and these players are able to be on their teams, he does not make the Super Bowl. He may make it to the NFC Championship. He may make it to the divisional round. He's not making it to the Super Bowl. Like I can almost guarantee that right now. Like that COVID-19 year helped out sports entirely for any team that, was missing out on things or like may have a shortened season or whatever it may be. Like the MLB, that helped the Dodgers drastically, and it helped the Rays because that was one of their better season. And if it wasn't for the shortened season, we would have either seen the Red Sox or the Yankees come out on top of that division.
But remember a part of that season, that's when they trade. It's actually kudos to the Boston Red Sox because they did not make that trade with Mookie, which I think was obviously the most atrocious trade that you can make since Babe Ruth.
Dude,
how on earth could you honestly do that if you're the Boston Red Sox? Like, and we had this conversation multiple times about there's no money in this. Yes, there is. You got to find it. You've got your shareholders and everything. Like you can make that happen, but because you traded that away, look at that whole outfield when they used to have Mookie Betts. I mean, no Andrew Benintendi, no Mookie Betts, and you don't even have there was another outfielder that they had. They were all gone.
Adrian Beltre.
Yeah, well, that was way before then, but still, that whole 2018 roster that did a lot of damage,
that won the World Series,
it was gone. And that's the thing is because Boston, but Boston sports at times they go through these waves, and it's predictable because you're seeing this right now with the Bruins, and they are going through an entire decline. And then the Patriots, luckily, they had a great draft, and that's why I said I think they'll be a playoff team this upcoming season. And then you've got the Red Sox; they're kind of teetering a little bit here and there in this season, and then there's the Boston Celtics, obviously. So it's good to have at least East Coast teams that do get competitive, but at the same time, I mean, Boston was just always weird. They'll go in these types of highs every time, and then by the time they got in the lows, remember the 2012 Boston Red Sox with Bobby Valentine? Oh, how bad was that year?
Yeah,
that was atrocious. And yet they come back and they win the World Series in 2013. So,
but a prime example of what I was talking about with the Tom Brady and the Buccaneers, like look at the 2019 season when all the players had no restrictions, everybody was able to play. Buccaneers get knocked out in the division.
But
they win the Super Bowl in 2020, and then in 2021, no restrictions, everybody's able to play. They get bounced in the divisional round. Like you've seen it the year before and the year after when there was no restrictions. All the fans were there, the players were able to be there, the coaches were able to be there. Nobody was missing time, and Brady does not make it. But they make it to the Super Bowl in the 2020 season when there's restrictions, there's coaches that are out, there's players that are out. Certain circumstances happen. To me, I don't know. I just don't like the 2020 season in terms of all championships, like the Lakers, the Buccaneers, and then the Dodgers. There's asterisks on them. That's what I'm thinking about.
Like I said, because the only thing that I would give the asterisk is to Major League Baseball because of how shortened that season was. But we were already on the tail end of NBA. We were already on the tail end of the NHL. So those were already set in stone. Now it was just like when did the playoffs start? Because that was the point that they needed to get out the way. But again, the grace period is the fact that those players were healthy and they were available. That's why at least like the Lakers played the way that they did, because had they not got that month break it would have been a completely different story. We would have seen that team probably would have made it to the second round, and then yet kind of be a little bit of a hard path to get into the final.
But they had that month off. That's what I'm saying.
I completely understand that. But that's what I'm saying. But that allowed players to get healthy. It allowed them to like rehab some of the stuff so that they were ready. Because how many times have we been calling Anthony Davis Mr. Glass? Like, if you didn't have him healthy, then they would have not had their rim protector and their perimeter defender. They would have never had that. So that's why I said they would have been easily marginalized. But we got to take a break up from here. But I am liking, so it's a crazy transition in hockey, but I am loving with what this team did. This one team that I'm about to talk about, because like I said, I think this is a bigger upgrade as far as coaching goes, but this team, I expect a bigger bounce back come next season for this team in particular. We'll talk about that in a bit. Plus, we'll also be talking a little bit more on NHL and NBA playoffs. Now that we've gotten the draft done, I mean, we're ready for, the schedule release come May 14th. So I'm excited about that one. Well, folks, like we said, with the playoffs already underway and in full, we've already got two advances. So tonight, we got the deal done against the Minnesota Wild. You got the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Washington Capitals, the Florida Panthers, and the Edmonton Oilers. Who is next? I got a lot to talk about of the Game 7 between the Stars and the Avs, but BetUS is all in for the playoffs, and you do not want to miss out on the action at BetUS.com, because there are so many different bet lines to choose from with their award-winning sports book of over 30 years, the best prop bets available as well, and not to mention the Super Bowl odds are already out because we got the schedule coming up around the corner, so I'm excited about every single team, how they're going to be shaped, and then we'll get a chance to predict their records. But because of that, BetUS, they're already up on top of it. They're on the edge of their game, and you know how they play it. But also, they also give you casino entertainment as well. Slots, tables, so much more. All of the things that you can experience a little bit of miniature Vegas, all just from the click of a button on your computer or on your laptop and phone. Wherever you may be, BetUS has you covered up on it. And when you sign up today, you also get your very own account manager to experience what BetUS is all about, as a way of saying thank you for signing up and trusting BetUS as your go-to sportsbook for all of your sportsbook needs. Go online to BetUS.com. Gambling problem, call 1-800-GAMBLER or seek therapy in your respective states, wherever you're eligible to play, because BetUS doesn't want you to gamble irresponsibly. They want you to enjoy it the best way possible during the playoffs. For NBA and for the NHL. Check out BetUS here today. BetUS, where the game begins.
Want to find your seat for the event of your choice but can't get one that fits your desire or your budget? Well, my friends, SeatGeek has you covered. SeatGeek is the official sponsor of the Snake Sports Talk Show. With a list of over hundreds of events to choose from, SeatGeek will assure you that you won't miss your seat with the amazing deal of your choice at the most affordable price. Whether it's looking for your best seat in the house of your favorite sports team, finding live concerts that get you closer to your favorite artist, or enjoying your spot at your favorite live shows, comedies, and more, SeatGeek has it all just for you. Go online to SeatGeek.com or download the app on your mobile device through Google Play and the App Store. And as a special offer before checkout, use promo code SNAKESPORTS and save yourself $20 off of your purchase of your first ticket, and experience why SeatGeek is the most trusted ticketing app for your next event. Remember, that's SeatGeek.com, and download the app on your phone with promo code SNAKESPORTS for $20 off and find your seat with SeatGeek.
Looking for a show with the best takes and opinions? Want a show with the best coverage around the world of sports? Jam-packed with an all-star interview lineup? Then the best place to find it all, sports and entertainment, is right here. Join Jake Silva on the Snake Sports Talk Show, presented by SeatGeek and BetUS. Weeknights at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific on Sports Wave Network.
Snake Sports Talk Show is sponsored by Muscle Tech, with hundreds of supplements and vitamins to choose from, all packed with 100% all-natural proven ingredients. You can be sure that Muscle Tech will give you the edge and the boost to train and look like your fit and healthy best, whatever your goals are. Try Muscle Tech today and use promo code SNAKESPORTS to save 30% off your purchases.
Jason, myself back here on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Well, things are looking very bright in the city of New York. I've been there 6 times in my lifetime. Love traveling around Times Square and all around the island itself. I have yet to actually make my way up to upstate New York. But speaking of the city of New York, this is a great time. And I know we're holding our breath for the New York Knicks at the moment, but they did finish the business against the Detroit Pistons, which I thought if that series was gonna linger on even forward, the Knicks would have been up and in trouble. But they did not. They got it done. They ended it, and I think Detroit is on the right path. But I wanted to talk about this though for a second. So. The New York Rangers, they missed the playoffs this year. They were such a mess, and it was bad. And I predicted this a couple years ago after they fired Gerard Gallant. I didn't like the hire of Peter Laviolette. Okay. Yes, Peter Laviolette is a Stanley Cup champion coach. Yes, he's had his moments of winning seasons. But did you watch how some of the recent teams looked like during his tenure later on? Like the Nashville Predators were not even arguably the most hyper-aggressive scoring team in the league. They were struggling to find it. And you're talking about a team that, I mean, they've got a great defenseman in Roman Josi. They had to move on for Pekka Rinne, who retired, and got Jussi Saros. And then they had a very good offense. And yet they couldn't do anything with it. They were streaky. So Peter Laviolette comes on and takes this team, who in Gerard Gallant, they made it to the Eastern Conference Final. They lost, but they were a very hyper-aggressive scoring team. With Mika Zibanejad, Chris Kreider, multiple other really good pieces I like, and a youngster in Adam Fox on defense. And then Gerard Gallant, they were in the first round and they got eliminated. And yet they fired him. And part of that reason is I love his hyper-aggressive scoring mentality, but the problem of it is that these puck-and-go type of situation schemes doesn't quite work a whole lot in today's hockey. It really doesn't. If you've got no backup defense for your goaltender, you're screwed. It's going to be a long, long series from there. So Peter Laviolette comes in, and the Rangers, they pick up where they left off at. They were a very aggressive team. I think they also won the President's Trophy, I believe, in 1 year. And then all of a sudden this past season, they missed the playoffs drastically. So Laviolette is now gone, but hope is not lost for this. So the New York Rangers, they have officially hired Mike Sullivan, the previous coach of the Pittsburgh Penguins, who for a long tenure led the Penguins to multiple Stanley Cup championships, also has a winning record amongst coaches. In fact, in 753 regular season games as a Penguins coach, he's 409, 255, and 89 as his record since being with Pittsburgh, the most winningest coach in their organization. And Mike Sullivan, by the way, a fun fact, he actually used to be an assistant coach with the Rangers. Yeah, years ago, back in 2009 and 2013. He was an assistant coach of the Rangers before he then ended up going to the Canucks that year after, and then goes and wins a Stanley Cup with Joel Keenville and that stacked Blackhawks team in Chicago as a development coach. And all it primed up for was his opportunity to coach the Pittsburgh Penguins and led them to multiple playoff appearances, multiple Stanley Cup championships. I love this move for the New York Rangers. I love it because this team has so much potential in them. I watched them win a President's Trophy whenever that entire first through third line, when they are red hot, man, they get going. And Mika Zibanejad is leading the charge. And you get Chris Kreider, you get Artemi Panarin, you get a bunch of really good offensive players, and yet this team can't even win a Stanley Cup? Like, what is wrong with this? And it's funny because when that Laviolette hiring happened, I'm like, oh boy, I don't like this. I don't like this streakiness. I do not have any disrespect at all for coaches. I don't. But I know a coach's identity when I see one. When you have a streakiness of your tenure as a coach, that often now equals to potential firings. That's why Peter Laviolette, John Hines, and even Sheldon Keefe, like he was a first-round exit for the New Jersey Devils. And look who took the place in Toronto. Craig Berube, winning coach, won a Stanley Cup. The New York Rangers, Mike Sullivan, winning coach. In fact, the Boston Bruins, who were in the Stanley Cup in 2019 against the Blues and lost, they then end up moving on for Bruce Cassidy to go and get Jim Montgomery, and he goes to Vegas, winning coach. Like, this cannot be coincidental, folks. It cannot be coincidental. But I'm also watching other coaches like Martin St. Louis, who honestly got the Montreal Canadiens out of a bottomless pit for a long time, and they were a playoff team. Most people will tell you they had no business in the playoffs. I'm looking at the Jack Adams finalists right now, and it's him. It's also the Winnipeg Jets' head coach. He's up and up for grabs. And then there's also the Washington coach. Honestly, in my opinion, I would probably take the Washington coach, but that should also not steer away from what Martin St. Louis, a former hockey player and now coach, has literally done for the Montreal Canadiens. I mean, we're watching Patrick Waugh right now trying to lead the Isles to the playoffs again. So Mike Sullivan, in my opinion, a winning coach. I mean, we were talking about this when there was the prime hirings of coaches like Bruce Cassidy and Pete DeBoer and Paul Maurice. Like that there, man, you got to get excited if up there in Madison Square Garden if you're a Ranger fan. Because now you've got the team that haunted your asses for a long time with the Pittsburgh Penguins. You just got their coach, and you upgraded massively. I wouldn't even be surprised. Chase might look at me sideways. I wouldn't be surprised if the New York Rangers literally won a Stanley Cup in the next 2 years. I wouldn't be surprised. That is the most loaded team. That is a team with a full amount of potential, even with Igor Shesterkin. That's a team that's going to win you multiple Metropolitan Division titles. It will. And so Mike Sullivan, in my opinion, he left his tenure with the Pittsburgh Penguins, got a couple Stanley Cups. But, man, this is going to help a team that drastically needs better leadership and somebody that can honestly be a consistent winning coach, almost like a Jim Harbaugh effect. And I think Mike Sullivan is exactly the right piece. And when I heard the news on it, I couldn't help but smile really hard for New York Rangers fans when I heard this news. Good for the Rangers. Good for Mike Sullivan. Watch this team in the next 2 years. They're probably going to end up with a Stanley Cup at some point. Chasing the news.
This is the Hot Press.
I'm telling you, man, when you get the right coach, it just changes everything. And look, here's like Laviolette, you get Joel Keenville, who's actually trying to make a comeback as a head coach. But then you watch John Tortorella, you watch Mike Babcock. These days of these kinds of coaches are literally right behind them. when they hired Laviolette after Gerard Gallant, I was like, oh boy, I don't like this. I don't like this, because how could you go from a coach who was a hyper-aggressive scoring coach, like that kind of schematic? Yes, the puck and go stuff doesn't quite work at all in this league because you need to have a solidified defense. You look at the Avs, you look at the Golden Knights, you look at, I'm surprised at Toronto right now, and they're moving on in the second round. Even that defense with Morgan Rielly, I love seeing. But you got to have a solidified defense. But with Peter Laviolette, those offenses literally went dead in the water. They were inconsistent. They didn't quite, became the hyper-aggressive scoring team as they were with Gerard Gallant. And that's where it ended the firing. But now with Mike Sullivan there, I'm telling you, give it 2 years. 2 years, this team will hoist the cup. Because I just see everything working with this organization. I've got the right offensive players. I've got the youngsters that are building up to their potential. I mean, hell, Adam Fox, a very offensive defenseman who can play in both those key positions, and Igor Shesterkin, who honestly was having a low-key Vezina trophy-like case for himself. They played great. So now you've got a winning coach. This is almost like a Jim Harbaugh effect. I mean, he was winning with San Francisco, didn't have a Super Bowl, though, but he had an appearance, but yet goes and wins a natty in Michigan and then comes back into the league, and now look at what he's doing with the Chargers. I mean, you got 3 Stanley Cups out of Mike Sullivan. Like, you've got 2 Stanley Cups out of Mike Sullivan with this. And I think this is going to be a very scary team in the Eastern Conference next year. I expect them to literally, blow everybody away in that conference.
It'll be interesting to see what happens.
Oh, man.
Let's move on to the football side of things real quick. One move that, went under the radar right after the draft hit. It was like a day or two after the draft was over with.
Yeah.
The Panthers made a move at wide receiver, and I am happy about it because this guy's story, after being cut from the Las Vegas Raiders and then going to be a trash man for a year because he was diagnosed with
ulcerative colitis. Yep, ulcerative colitis, which is very scary because a side note, because I know you mentioned about this, but that sometimes can take a toll on your weight.
Yeah.
You'd be losing.
He dropped to below 100 pounds as an adult male human being, which is very, very dangerous. And he said he's back up to his 175, 180 frame, and he's got the strength back, and he's ready to make an NFL comeback, and that is Hunter Renfrow. I hope that he can be the guy that he was on the Raiders for the Panthers, because now you've got Xavier Legette, Jalen Coker, Adam Thielen, Tedero McMillan, and Hunter Renfrow. That is a dangerous wide receiver core right there, in my opinion.
I think what that's going to lead to is because it's definitely going to give them a veteran experience type that you can nail into the slot, because you've got youngsters like Xavier Legette and Jalen Coker that you're trying to build up. You at least have that veteran experience relationship with Adam Thielen. But I think all of this is trying to get veteran guys that can help out to build confidence for Bryce Young. I mean, look at how they ended last season. They ended it on a very positive note to where they go into the draft, addressed a couple of needs and depth pieces. I think this is a team that could very much do some pretty good stuff for the NFC South, because that division itself is wonky, but yet Tampa stays competitive. The Falcons now addressed a couple pieces themselves. I like what the Falcons did. And the Saints, it's going to take a little bit of time, but even they'll be interesting come the start of the season. I'm waiting to see what Kellen Moore does from there. But I think giving Dave Canales another weapon from there at that arsenal to help out build confidence for Bryce Young.
Give him a safety blanket in that slot, which is going to be great.
Yes, and by the way, I mean, I looked at their draft picks, man, and this is
mostly defense.
Nice. Yeah, mostly defense. They went in on defense. Well, and I think a lot of that is because of the identity of the GM, because he was a former defensive player. So
And they went offense last year, and then went offense with their first pick and picked up Hunter Renfrow. Then they're like, okay, let's go defense the rest of the way.
And the thing is, too, is because like a lot of people don't realize this, but sometimes when you look at identities and scheme fits, that's where a lot of those teams that most people would probably be turning sideways on, like maybe turning the cheeks on, those are the teams that usually surprise us. I mean, when you look at like take for example, when Jim Harbaugh took the job with the Chargers, I mean, they were off 5-12. And then all of a sudden they addressed a few things up on the draft. And then they turn around and win 11-6. Like, scheme fits often turn identities for teams to where they become playoff teams. It just happens all the time. So who knows what the Panthers might look like this upcoming season?
And like they were 2 dropped passes last year away from being 9-8 rather than 8-9. Yeah, and it was insane because I remember the drop, the fumble versus the Chiefs, and also the drop that Leggett had, and then I also remember the game. I think it was against the Buccaneers where they had a play as well where they dropped a pass. That would have won them a game as well. Yep. So they could have had 2 extra wins on top of their record that they had. It would have been.
But you know what? That's okay because honestly, I mean, I think you were on this. I think I had this team being the best worst team last year. I think if I were so that's the thing. They ended it on a note where they were the best worst team because even though the record showed for itself, but look at the production that they ended the year off. That's where you got off that
benching. He lit it up.
He looked very confident in that pocket. That's all you needed for these young quarterbacks, and that's what people have to realize. This is not consistently a development league. We're a caffeinated society. You've got billion-dollar owners who are very impatient, okay? They're very incompetent when it comes to that because they want the results now. And so that's why it's hard to develop these guys. So
which leads me into the next segment that I have, which I'm like side note, I'm glad that Jackson Dart's going to get to sit and learn for 1 year behind Russell Wilson and develop like he's supposed to. But going into that developmental aspect that we are talking about, look at all the quarterbacks in the past that we have been able to see sit and have the success. One thing that we know for sure is Kevin O'Connell is an offensive-minded genius. He got Sam Darnold looking like a top 10, top 5 quarterback last year, the way that he was playing. And that begs the question of like, how is JJ McCarthy going to play? Well, now after seeing him set out for a full year due to injury, I think that was the best thing for him because not only were you able to sit and learn and develop, you were able to like study the playbook, you were able to learn the NFL defenses, you were able to see the things behind the scene. And he said yesterday that he is fully ready to go and to be the Vikings starter this year, and I'm excited to see what J.J. McCarthy has as the Vikings QB.
I cannot wait to just see what the Vikings look like with J.J. McCarthy fully healthy, because here's the deal is, I mean, you watched that preseason game just as much as I did, but when I watched all those throws and everything of like, because again, we study this. We're doing our own scouting from here. Pocket awareness, accuracy, and touch off the football. J.J. McCarthy looked pro-ready. And now, not as pro-ready as like someone like a Michael Penix, who had a lot of the experience up and on his belt, but pro-ready because of the fact of, look at who led the way as far as for him to be ready for the NFL. That's all kudos to Jim Harbaugh. You had to make sure that you instilled a winning mentality any way possible and be smart about that. So when you gave that off to Kevin O'Connell, he can now take care of the rest. He can do all of the developmental stuff. So the Vikings, I love what they addressed with their offensive line. They got a bunch of really good players. They bring back one. And at the same time, Christian Darrisaw will be much better this upcoming season.
And they got the best guard in the draft in Donovan Jackson.
Yes. And so, you know what? Like, I'm not saying that the Vikings will repeat what they did last year because they went 14-3. I think this is probably going to be a more of a competitive 12-5 team because that NFC North is competitive as hell. I mean, I've got Ben Johnson and the Bears working wonders after the draft and free agency. I've got the Packers who finally drafted a wide receiver after 17 years. And who knows what the Detroit Lions. that's my question mark, because when you saw the top 10, the reason I had the Detroit Lions off of there is because I want to see what that team looks like without those coaches. Because coaching is important. And if that identity is stripped away from someone like Dan Campbell, who we know is more of kind of that rah-rah coach, in my opinion, no disrespect, but if he loses that part of that nucleus of that team, Detroit may be in trouble. But again, that list can be interchangeable. But yes, I am so excited for what the Vikings will look like the upcoming season, because I am all JJ McCarthy season.
I think the Lions will be the worst team in that division, but still have a winning record.
I thought about that too. I don't see,
because I think the Bears are going to improve drastically with the offensive changes that they made, offensive line and wide receiver and with the Vikings still having everybody back and a fully healthy and better offensive line. And then
not to mention they also added Jordan Mason, another running back.
And you're going to have a fully healthy Jordan Love to start the season with a much better wide receiver core than what he did last year. And the Lions lost 6 coaches along with a couple players and everything. Yeah, they got better and upgraded and everything in terms of their players, but we don't know how the coordinators that are taking over are going to be. So it's going to be very interesting to see there. But I want to move into a different topic that still involves football, and that's what most of my news is going to be about. But me and you heard on draft night the antics that were going on behind the scene with Jeff Ulbrich's son and the prank phone calls. Yeah. And, that is heartbreaking, because there are several players out there that are expecting calls that are going to change their life and make it like a drastic turn of events. And, to get a call pretending to be one team and then eventually being another, that is very confusing. But the one thing Roger Goodell wants to do in the future is try to figure out an alternative way to make it to where the players either aren't called beforehand and they see their picks live and then get the call afterwards, or make it to where it's only the owners and GMs and nobody else has the number to the players.
Well, that's truthfully what it should be, because here's the thing. You don't want to hear it. Like the only time that you will hear it from the coach is unless if he's in there in the war room and they pass the phone along. But I mean, here's the deal. I think the NFL did it right with as far as punishment wise, because first of all, this was not planned. Okay, that's the difference. This is a scenario where you've got a 21-year-old kid doing 21-year-old dumb stuff. Okay, we all remember when we were in our 20s, we did a lot of dumb crap. Okay, but at the same time, I mean, if that was my kid, oh yeah, I would put him through the absolute ultimate penalty, because to me, you just cost me $250,000. Seriously, like, you know how much that could honestly be? Like, this is not like you just lost $20 at some freaking slot. This is $250,000 we're talking about. So, but at the same time,
and potentially it could have been his job if it was worse.
Yes, and so, but because it was not planned, that is at least the grace thing for Jeff Ulbrich. So because here's the thing, they just hired him, so they're not gonna immediately just can him just because of that, because then there would have been a lot of worse consequences. But at the same time, you got to give it at least a shot. But I agree with that. And that's the way that it should have been, is that the owners and GMs would have those numbers and that they would have those safely secured. And like I said, this was not planned compared to something like a Spygate or a Deflategate, where some of that stuff, I mean, that was sketchy as all hell. And it seemed like that was planned. I mean, you know what I mean? Because at that point, if it's something that is planned, that is done by the help of the organization, lose a draft pick. Lose it.
Yeah.
That's what I would do. But because this wasn't planned, and because that this was basically under the coach's son, the fine was perfect. It's fine. But
I just don't understand how Jeff Ulbrich had the number. Like, it should just be the GM and the owners. Those are the only two people in the entire NFL organization that should have these numbers to be able to call these players. There should be no way a defensive coordinator for a team should have these numbers to call a player.
Like, the only time that they would have those numbers to call a player is unless after he is selected. That's the only time that you would, because then at that point, they're drafted, they're ready to roll, they're ready to go in camp and practices, and that's the only time that you will finally give them that number. That's it. But for the remainder of that should be the owners and the GM.
Yeah,
because honestly, I would want to hear.
His trainer was just like, "How did he get that number? I just got this phone today for this specific reason. How did he get this?"
Right. So here's the deal. And it's like all these players, they all gone through it, right? So if I was an NFL player getting drafted, of course the first voice that I want to hear is the GM, because that's the one who's making that move for that draft pick. So I'm hearing from his voice first, and then I'm going to go and I'm going to pass that to the coach. Then I would have to hear Raheem Morris, his voice, and then hear one of the best owners ever in the NFL in Arthur Blank. Because at that point, I am now greeted with gratitude for them selecting me. And at that point, I'm going to do whatever it takes to make this organization a winning organization. But yeah, it should honestly just be the owners and the GM. I know that it sounds a little bit over complex, but it should not, though. It should not be this complicated. It should be that simple, just like that.
Yeah, I agree, because, like I said before, this is somebody's livelihood. They're expecting to figure out where they're going to be for the next 5 to 15 years, depending on if they work out, and they want to make sure that they are with the right team. And if somebody from the New York Jets is calling you or pretending to be the New York Jets, but really you're going into the Indianapolis Colts, it's a big deal, because now if the camera pans to you and you're wearing a New York Jets hat and you haven't been selected yet, that's going to be a big issue. So let's hope that they can, either button this up next year or solve the problem. But the last piece of news that I have is, it's more of a rumor that's kind of being thrown out there, but Josh Harris of the Washington Commanders has been talking about throwing out the idea of playing at RFK Stadium again, and then also throughout the renderings of a potential new stadium that would be built. And he also has been talking about throwing out the idea of bringing back the retro Washington logo of the Redskins. And he has said in the past how he does not want to go backwards and bring back the name of the Washington Redskins, but just bring back the logo.
Right. So here's the deal. I would not have had a problem with them going back to the Redskins. And the only reason of this is because they should have never have had that name change in the first place when it came to Dan Snyder. I mean, we all knew Dan Snyder was such an atrocious, obnoxious
and I feel like
owner.
He's the reason why they the people wanted to change.
He is. There's no feeling. He is the reason of why Washington went through this entire debacle and turmoil in the first place.
If it was Josh, they wouldn't have said anything.
Exactly. And so, but here's the deal. So I actually read up on that story and I talked to a couple people. So it is finalized, actually. They did sign the papers, so that is happening for RFK. Now they are going to end up doing some renderings. They are going to end up doing a lot more renovations to the place, but they're going to make it their own. And I'm very happy of the fact, because the closer that they get up to DC, they're not having to do this whole drive and all the rest of it, just to go out and watch the Commanders play. They're going back into the way that it should be. And at the same time, I mean, you've got the Capitals, who are obviously making a lot of noise in DC. You've got the Nationals, who won a World Series in 2019. And in the end, we get the Redskins back. Because here's the funny thing: I've actually seen this petition, but even the governing bodies of the of the reservation, so all of the Native American tribes, a ton of them all signed off on their petition that they want the Redskins back, and their reason is because when that got adopted, okay, when they were that team, it showed a side of respect because number one, obviously that part of that region is tribal there. So if you see all of the tribal map, in fact, my late grandmother, I remember when I was hanging out at their house, there was an entire tribe map, and it was all the way from like coast to coast, all from there. So that's where, you just see within that region, especially up in DC, that's where they're respected. So,
and they said that the logo represented a chief that they respected a lot for their tribe. And they said that is like seeing that logo out in the middle of the field, brought a lot of, heartwarming feelings.
It brought a lot of, it did. And at the same time, I mean, think about that population. They would have came out to a game, especially too when we talk about like the Cowboys, right? They every year in Thanksgiving, it would be the classic Cowboys versus Indians kind of thing. It's retro, and then you got the Hogs as well. So I love this. And again, if the Pittsburgh Pirates could honestly learn from this, this is what a healthy culture is supposed to look like. And Josh Harris is doing all the right things because, I mean, he's doing this for the fan base because that fan base went through so much hell with Dan Snyder that the best way that you could do this is to make it right.
And he knows he's losing money in the NBA because nobody's watching, so he goes to the NFL to make all the money.
Yeah, but here's the thing, if Philly fans are honestly going to be salty about the state of the Sixers, well, then why in the hell do you still believe in this process with Joel Embiid?
Yeah.
Is he really going to be the be-all, end-all to give you a title in Philly? I mean,
yeah. No, I would love to see the Washington Redskins logo back, and I would love to see that. And like the renderings of the stadium that they had, or the renovations where you see the Capitol building in the distance. I love it. Looked beautiful. I love what Josh Harris is doing with that team.
Josh Harris. He's already making a mark as being one of the most well-respected owners. I mean, like, here's the thing. If you get Arthur Blank, who probably, by the time he's passed, I think we could honestly say that Josh Harris would be the next guy right up there. Yeah. Like, as one of the top 3 best owners that I would love to, have somebody that knows how to build a culture like that. So, yeah, I would absolutely love that.
Yeah.
All right, Chase with the news.
This is the Hot Press.
So, lots of noise, at least in Denver here, because tomorrow it's all on the line. And these are both in Denver. So that is the Colorado Avalanche last night forced a Game 7 against the Dallas Stars. And then the Clippers came back and they survived against the Denver Nuggets. So everything is all on the line. So I'm going to try to say this as best as possible without being without kind of sounding like I'm a hater just because I live here in Denver. To me, I love Denver's fan bases. I really do. They love our show. They absolutely love what we're doing here. And so, of course, and you're talking about it, Denver is a very prime sports city. It is. I mean, outside the Colorado Rockies, that ain't doing nothing. I mean, you got everybody else all on the same pages. But I was talking about this on the drive this morning, and to me, this is a last shot for both the Stars and for the Avs, because on Colorado's end, all season long, what have we been talking about? They have been inconsistent with goaltending all year long. They couldn't figure out, again, they got out of this Mikko Rantanen contract dispute. They go and trade him to Carolina, which they got the better end of the deal because he didn't sign a contract in Carolina. So he then gets traded again, goes to Dallas, and now he's basically beefed up with Wyatt Johnston and Jason Robertson in that offensive front. Those are going to be the next guys that when Jamie Benn and Tyler Seguin, they're long past, like that's your offensive core for the next 5 years. So, and yet Dallas paid the money. So to me, the Avs definitely addressed a lot during the trade deadline because they go and get Martin Necas. They go and get Ryan Lindgren. They go and get Brock Nelson. They get a bunch of really good players I like. But the problem of it is that they went back to the way the season started for them. Inconsistent in goaltending. Like I said in this series, if you do not know what your identity is come the months of January to March, you are going to get exposed. That is the way that this works in the NHL. It is very hard to hoist Stir Stanley when you're inconsistent like this. And you don't even know if Scott Wedgwood or Mackenzie Blackwood is your answer. You don't know that. And you've got a very talented offensive player who's a Hart Trophy winner in Nathan McKinnon, who is unstoppable. The next closest thing to Connor McDavid. And yet they're inconsistent on the most important spot of them all in goaltending. Now, this doesn't quite leave out what will happen with Dallas. Because, Chase, I promise you, if they lose tomorrow, if Dallas loses tomorrow, you know what the Dallas headlines are going to be? Pete DeBoer is not the answer. It literally is going to be that tomorrow. Because how many times has Pete DeBoer fought tooth and nail to get this team, to get any of his teams back into the Stanley Cup final? Because think about it. When he was coaching with the Carolina Hurricanes, he got them there to the show and lost. Gets the San Jose Sharks to the final against Pittsburgh. Or no, it was actually, it was against the Pittsburgh Penguins. And they lost.
I mean, I'll take him on the Red Wings any day of the week because they have not made the playoffs in a long time.
See, this is the thing. It's so because Pete DeBoer I already know what he is. He's a defensive identity. And what do teams like the Detroit Red Wings need? Defense. And not to mention, you got to build around that offense with Dylan Larkin. So that's the thing. That's a perfect identity for them. But also at the same time, I mean, Pittsburgh's looking for a coach. I think that would just be a weird, wonky fit because you moved on from Mike Sullivan, who's now taken the Rangers job, which was by far the best job ever taken around the league. I would honestly think, you know what? If you watched, how would Pete DeBoer look like if he coached the Buffalo Sabres? With that defensive core with Owen Power and Rasmus Dahlin, oh my God, that would have literally screamed wonders. And then you got Tate Thompson, who's a ridiculous player. So that would have honestly broken Buffalo's curse getting in the playoffs. If you got Pete DeBoer tomorrow, but all of this is on the line because you're doing this without Miro Heiskanen, which is one of your core defensive players, and you're at this point, and I love Jake Ottinger, but this is not the kind of position you wanted to be. And I predicted that, Chase, that would be the longest series amongst all these other series that I've seen. Because the Golden Knights got it done against the Minnesota Wild. You don't want to face that team. You also don't want to face the Edmonton Oilers, who I am holding to an extent because I think when we did our bracket, I think that's the one series I got wrong. I did not expect the Oilers to literally pull out and survive that game against the Kings. I think the Kings were going to be on fire. They were going to generate the scores, and nope, young team. They're almost like the Houston Rockets. Young, trying to get back into themselves, but not quite there yet. But they are exciting. They are exciting with Darcy Kemper, but man, I didn't think Edmonton was going to pull that off. But at the same time, it makes me wonder about Edmonton for the playoffs. It really does make me a little bit concerned because now you got Vegas, who you knew they needed to wake up, and they have. They played a lot better. They're smooth, and now you got to play Edmonton. And when you look at the Jets and who they would have to play, again, that's why I think the Winnipeg Jets can make it into the Western Conference Final. If they pull this off against St. Louis, it's very quite possible. But I want to say this because I think it's interesting because think about how many times we talk about the Dallas Cowboys, right? Because when are they ever going to get back to the NFC Championship game again? When are they ever going to do that?
I don't know, but they had a really good draft this year.
They had a great draft.
Impressed so much with them.
So was I. They had such a great draft. I love what the pieces they took. But here's the funny thing. How good does the Toronto Maple Leafs look right now? With Craig Berube and the way that they've put all that together. Canada hasn't won a Stanley Cup in 30 years. And yet.
When's the last time Canada won a championship in general, like for any team?
No, that's been in 30 years because the last
Toronto Raptors.
Well, the Toronto Raptors, in 2019, they won that NBA Finals. That's the last time because the
Blue Jays won in 93.
They won in 93 of that back-to-back year. They also, because the last one for hockey, I think, because it was done by the Montreal Canadiens. That was the last one who won it. Montreal, of all teams. Yeah. They won. That was the last one they won until 30 years later. So you look at the state of the Toronto Maple Leafs. And you know what? I don't say this a whole lot, okay? Chase is my witness. I don't say this a whole lot about the Toronto Maple Leafs because they always seem to give me the same result every time when we're in the playoffs. First round, second round exits, I don't care. But listen, Craig Berube, I think once they hired him, because remember, this is a previous Stanley Cup champion coach back in 2019 with the St. Louis Blues and did so many wonders to this. So the way Craig Berube is taking the reins of the Toronto Maple Leafs right now, this has to be by far the best looking Toronto Maple Leafs team I think I've seen in a long time because it took time. I mean, Austin Matthews is the core piece. I think Mitch Marner, what's funny is when Berube took the job, who's the first private conversation that he literally had over lunch? Mitch Marner. And I think a lot of that was because of the contract situation. I think the other thing is like health concerns and consistency. How good does Mitch Marner look now? A lot more focused, a lot more determined, much like William Nylander and the rest of them. I mean, I love watching Morgan Riley play defense, but I don't know, man. Something tells me about the Toronto Maple Leafs. They look really interesting. And I mean, I love what the Florida Panthers do, but I'm a little skeptical as far as the chemistry of their core because we know about Brad Marchand. But you got him. You got the series, though, between Washington and Carolina. Boy, is that going to look nice. And I think between that series, I think I took the Carolina Hurricanes in that series. Yeah. Because I think at the end of it, Carolina, they actually match up very well to each other. If you look at tail of the tape, they match up very, very well. But Vegas and Edmonton, Carolina and Washington, and Toronto, they make this out. Yeah, you're going to have them and the Florida Panthers. But now that's not an easy. That's going to be hard of a matchup to really kind of handle. They're going to go through some of those struggles, but I don't know. I watched that game the other night, And I'm just looking at the fluidity that Craig Berube's putting this team in. And it has been forever, Chase. It's been forever with this Maple Leafs squad. They didn't even get this
forever for a lot of hockey
God,
teams.
they did. But here's the thing. This is a team that was going from Mike Babcock as the head coach, and then they had Sheldon Keefe, who truthfully did not quite fit the identity of the Maple Leafs, truthfully. That's why I see him right now in New Jersey. It kind of works, but he was a first-round exit. Is he ever going to get past that? And then here's Craig Berube, of all people. Like, if I had to look at coaching hires, Craig Berube's the best one that fits that identity. I think Mike Sullivan was by far the winningest coach to take that job in New York. Because I'm watching Washington, I'm watching Toronto, I'm watching Florida. That Eastern Conference is going to continue to get better and better. But the question now is, what do we do about John Cooper in Tampa? I mean, that was hard. That was a hard series against Florida. And I mean, Tampa's been doing this thing for a long time, but are they going to stick with him? Or is this kind of the end of the road? He's been a great coach. So I don't know. If Tampa moves on, they're going to be a completely different team. You're gonna probably have to dismantle this whole team. It looks hard. I mean, you've already got Nikita Kucherov as a Hart Trophy finalist. Between him and Draisaitl and Connor Hellebuyck. And they've had great memories of being a very competitive team. But that's going to be really hard to replace if they move on from John Cooper. I mean, he's a great coach. If they move on, somebody's calling. And I would really think after Mike Sullivan, I would think Buffalo should be on that call. They should be on that call. This is a team that is completely in the gutter as far as coaches and player developments and the organization. And you need to do it right by Buffalo fans. Seriously. How many times have we been harping about the Sabres trying to get in the playoffs? And you know what's funny? They almost remind me of the time when they had Adam Gase and the Miami Dolphins. How many times they were outside looking into the playoffs and they didn't make it? That's what they feel like to me. They really do. Oh my God. And this has been long years, and this is the team that moved on from Jack Eichel. Yeah, how did that turn out? He seems to be just fine.
Is Gase even in the league anymore?
I don't think so. And you know what? I'm better off.
He was a good OC, just a terrible head coach.
Yeah. Listen, good OCs is never, ever going to move me as a great head coach.
No.
It's never going to do it for me. That's why you look at Josh McDaniels and what he is. We all know that
It really depends on how you're managing your offense, though. Like, if you are innovative, you're making, in-game adjustments, you are, look at what, there's a difference between what Josh McDaniels did and what Ben Johnson has done. Like a complete
No, you're right about that. And there is a difference behind that. I'm not disputing that at all. But yeah, I think it's going to be interesting. Who do you got?
Playoff format, or this whole playoffs, with NBA, and then and then now we're gonna go into the MLB playoffs at the end of the
postseason.
Summer. It's gonna be interesting to see.
But I love the postseason because it now previews us for the NFL season.
Yeah,
that's always what it does. It's this endless cycle. So that's exactly how it is. But again, if the NBA could just get their crap together, and as far as with scheduling, because first of all, NFL season starting. Why would I want the NBA literally clashing with the NFL? I don't want that. I want them more of them starting up after Like maybe like you start the season up, but then by the time you got like the Super Bowl and all the rest of it, because you got to think about some of these viewerships. I mean, it's all based upon the algorithm.
You have an entire 2 months where there's no football going on at all.
Yeah, well,
no NFL talk. No, like, you know, nothing important. It's like that time frame between the NFL season and you know like after the draft. So like from June to the end of July, like there's nothing going on until they start training camp.
No, and that's usually like our vacation. That's like a vacation period. And then, you know, you're going to go out to baseball games. You're probably going to end up catching, you know, the tail end of NBA and hockey. So it's vacation mode all the way through, because once the draft comes up, and then by the time we get the schedule release and we get OTAs, it's game on. It's game on from there. So, and think about this, like think about the business we're in, is because we are matching with the algorithm that we have. Because if we don't match that algorithm, that's where it takes a toll. It never fails. That's in any business you are in. Because again, you want to strike when the iron's hot. That's initially with what we are. Because if we miss out on that, there goes a bunch of viewers right out the table. And then we're going to have to regain momentum in order to bring that back.
Yep.
That's exactly what the NBA has to figure out. But again, when I start thinking about the playoffs and even for the NHL, can we shorten the first rounds? Because nothing gets more interesting until we get into like the championships and the finals.
That's why I love the MLB and the way they do things.
Oh, I loved it. I thought their playoff format's
first
great.
of three, dude, you're doing a first of three elimination. And I love the way that they do that. Like, you know, in the wild card, it's a you win and you're in type thing. It's a one game, boom, you're good.
Yeah.
Then you go on to the divisional series and you play a three, like you get like 3 wins and you're in, or a best 3 of 5. Then you go on to a 4 out of 7 for the championship and the World Series. Like, I wish NBA would do that. It would be so much better.
Seriously, I would love
and
that more
NHL.
than anything. Yeah, 100%. Well, who do you got tonight, Chase? You thinking Golden State or Houston?
I got Houston.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oof. I don't know. I looked at that stat sheet from the last game. Tell me that's not an inexperienced team right there with Houston. Nothing against them, but that looked very inexperienced just from the box score.
It does, but
because Jalen
always
Green,
that one team throughout any playoff series, you know, hockey, NBA, MLB, and football. There's always that one team that you know it's either down and out and then comes back, or that one team that nobody thinks about and they count out and they turn around and they make something of it and make something happen. And I got that to be the Houston Rockets.
Well, it's just like I said, is because this was OKC 2 years ago. What Houston's at right now, because Jalen Green in that last game, he put up 8 points. Man, he disappeared. And the only one who really stepped up on it was Shinga. That's the only one that I know that like he played well. Fred VanVleet didn't play too bad, but man, when Jalen Green disappeared, that hurt. So, but it's all part of the experience build. Because again, you give this puppy 2 years, all you need to give them is a experienced scorer like KD or somebody like that. You don't even need to move off of any of your young core, because if you do that, this is where you're going to be constantly rebuilding every time. You have a very solid young core. You just need to have an experienced shooter. I mean, isn't this the same predicament we talk about with Orlando? I mean, how many times have we seen Orlando struggle to shoot threes? Yeah. They struggle at that massively, but they're a very good defensive and perimeter attacking team. They just need to have somebody to hit the long shots. So, and I think Detroit, I think the Pistons are. I mean, how good does Cade Cunningham look? I think they're off to the right foot, but I think it might take them a little bit longer than what like the build of Houston and what the build of OKC was with SGA and Chet Holmgren. They will be better. They will be back in this situation, but I thought they did a fantastic job. What a bounce back after an embarrassing year last year. Like the Pistons did very well.
They did. I thought that they were gonna win. I was hoping for it. I was just like, dang.
I know. But again, if the Knicks were to let that series linger on, the Knicks would have been in trouble. Knowing exactly what how Karl Anthony Towns is and the rest of that team. I mean, I love Jalen Brunson and I do like OG Anunoby, but that thing, especially with how Tom Thibodeau is handling that.
I know. Cat is making that team look really good.
Oh, I don't know. I think to me personally, I mean, yeah, you can have an offensive merchant, but when we need defense, where's Cat at the end of it? That's why you are seeing a different shift in identity in Minnesota right now without it. And DiVincenzo's being that
ever since Cat left, you can see a whole different team.
DiVincenzo gives you physicality. Julius Randle, physical, gives you points. That's all the identity that's meshing into who Anthony Edwards is. Hyper-aggressive, physical, defensive. I mean, Rudy Gobert had the best game of his life. In that game, again, you know what I mean? I'm like, how does Rudy Gobert literally do that to the Lakers?
I mean, you want to know what's funny? I honestly forgot the Pistons existed. Like, I truly did. Like, I was talking with somebody the other day. I was just like, you know what? Detroit should get a pro basketball team. And they're like, they do have one. I was like, oh, snap, they do. I forgot that they existed because they've been so bad for years.
Oh my
and I'm
God.
just like, they were so irrelevant.
Well, hold on, though. I mean, if you're talking about prime 80s and 90s, I mean, the Detroit Bad Boys was where it's at. With Isaiah Thomas.
I'm talking about like since like after 2004, they've been just
yeah, but I'm saying like I mean because you know what's funny is like I see this the same way I saw the New York Islanders. I mean when they won 4 straight Stanley Cups, and that's it just like Jordan and the Bulls. Gretzky could not get past that Isles team. He could not. He was having such a hard time, and until Paul Coffey and like and then you go and get like Mark Messier, and you got a very good goaltender in Grant Furr. Like it took time until the Oilers finally won it, because that was the same prime conversation. Because Jordan, like he was talented, but you know he needed a supplemental piece. That's where Scottie Pippen came around, and everybody else started building around it. I mean, you had the coach before Phil Jackson. He wasn't terrible, but just couldn't quite get over the hump as like what Phil Jackson did, instilling that triangle offense. That used to piss off like MJ all the time, trying to perfect that damn thing. And they finally did it. They won championships. And so that's the thing. That's the same way I felt about Detroit. Just like the Isles, they won championships. They were a pain in the ass. And yet, after Isaiah Thomas and all the rest of them, I mean, that Chauncey Billups, Rip Hamilton, and Ben Wallace team, that gave you serious Detroit vibes again. That was a great team. It was very defensive.
Like I remember playing my dad in NBA like 04 on the Xbox, and like he was like, yeah, Chauncey Billups.
Man, what a great team. But I can't believe you. Yeah, they still got a team. You know who does need an NBA team?
Forgot about it. It just did. It went out of my mind. I'm just wait, what? Oh yeah, they do.
So here's what's funny, right? And this was a conversation before we end the show is, how does Pittsburgh not have an NBA team? I mean, we also talk about, the city of Philadelphia. I mean, they got the Sixers, but how do they not have women's basketball in Philly? In Villanova, I mean, all throughout there in that whole East Coast region, how do they not have a WNBA team?
I mean, do you think that they could do an expansion team for
they probably
Pittsburgh.
Honestly, well,
I can see it.
I could see it too, but I mean, Adam Silver's got to fix that stuff up.
Because I know that they've been wanting to add another team up in Portland, up near that area, Seattle, or they want to bring back one in Seattle.
I mean, please bring back the Supersonics. Seriously, bring them back. I get tired of
Like if you're gonna add two teams, like add one to the west, add one to the east.
No, that's the perfect idea. In a perfect world, that would be the perfect idea.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I mean, just like you did in baseball. Like you took the Astros from the NL conference, moved them to the AL, you got more interleague play, and you make the teams even. Like,
well, now we got hockey in the Pacific Northwest, and then we got them in Utah. So it's like any of these kinds of things now is possible of it. But yeah,
bring back the Montreal Expos while you're at it. Like, come on, man. I want to see that shit. Like that would be awesome.
Two Canadian teams in baseball again, man.
Dude, that would be something. And then bring that team down in Orlando like they want. There was a billionaire that proposed a stadium that was looking amazing, that would be fan friendly and close to Disney World, and they said it would be like amazing to play down there. And I saw the stadium renderings and how
have you seen,
dude, like I want that team in Orlando.
This is what's funny though, because I mean I'm watching the Rays play at Steinbrenner Field, and man, Steinbrenner Field is very nice during the spring training. It really is. I've heard a lot of people that live in Florida and within that region, and they go to games like that all the time. They're like, best experience I ever had. Best experience. But yeah, if you know what though, if they move the Rays to Orlando, I mean, that's not a bad money market. And not to mention, people like Orlando themselves would literally endorse this, because all they got really is just the Magic. So they would definitely endorse the Rays. I don't know.
I do wonder where we're going to get expansion teams. I know we've gotten some from the NHL, but I wonder when we're going to get some from the NBA, the NFL, and the MLB.
The NBA though, like I said, they just need to build their consistency. That's the problem with them. Yeah. Hockey already has, they got a new Canadian television deal. They've already got new money that's coming up from here. I mean, the WNBA is also in its prime too, because
they just got a new team in Cleveland. Wow, brought it back and everything. But the WNBA did.
Yeah, and that's the thing. And because this whole Caitlin Clark effect is really going into fruition, all you got to have is just get Caitlin Clark into the Olympics, and then your numbers are going to go through the roof. There's more new money to be made. That's the prime time of what the WNBA is going to experience. So
it's like I want to see an expansion team, and I know Roger Goodell's been talking about an overseas division and everything, and I'm like, bro, if you're gonna make it happen, make it happen. I'm tired of waiting.
Yeah, I don't know how that it might work, but we'll see. We'll see what happens.
Yeah,
good show. We had a lot of surprises, but at the same time, I mean, we had these series wins were obvious outside of the Oilers and the Kings. It was clearly obvious right up from there, but lots of fun stuff though afterward. Next week's going to be fun though, because we got a lot to really talk about up from there. We're gearing ourselves up before the schedule release, because usually around this time is when we'll do our divisional and season predictions at that point, because now I'll have a clear idea what all those schedules are going to look like. So with Chase,
ladies and gentlemen, you're going to have to deal with Jake next week, because due to my work schedule, I will be working 2 to 10 next week. So I will not be on the show for next week, but for the following weeks after that, I work 8 to 4, so I will be able to be on the show.
You'll be ready, though, by that time the schedule release is up and out, Matt. So there you go.
Yes, sir.
All right, well, with Chase and myself, have a great rest of the week, folks. We made it to this point. Enjoy it, and we'll see you guys next week on the Snake Sports Talk Show. Take care, everyone.